when you're building something from scratch, you ever think about those people who, like, in the early days, they would build like their villages, or they would build their huts, or they would build concrete, and then they would start building cities and stuff? Like, you think about how they created New York City. You ever think about like how they had to do it with their bare hands, you know what I mean? Start from scratch, work in the mud, you know what I mean? Really crafting a city, something that's like, what it is today. And I often think about how they had to start from scratch. They had to start from the bottom, bottom, bottom. And every time I think about that, I'm like, yes, we do that too, but we do it to I guess a higher level of efficiency, or we do it in a way that's like, it's already organized, it's already planned, and sometimes it has to follow certain codes and permits, and like you have to hire a construction team. Like, it's all, business oriented, and it's not enough about just like, I just want to build something, you know what I mean? Like, I just want to create, So building something from scratch, when I think about it, it's really, really cool when you think about it in like a past aspect. And then when you think of building something from scratch today, it kind of feels like you either succeed or you don't. You know what I mean? Like, if you're building a business from scratch, you're starting at the very bottom. And everybody who starts a business probably feels like this. It's like there's the promise, and then there's the reality. You know what I mean? There's the expectation, and then there's the reality. You know what I mean? It's all, it's all there. The potential is there. It's just a matter of like building the business brick by brick. You know what I mean? Sometimes you fall short and the business fails, but the idea, the promise, the actual like thing that you were working on is still there. It's still possible. You're still capable of creating it. It's just a matter of like, damn, how do I continue to build this when I don't have the tools at my disposal to like make it happen, And so building something from scratch these days kind of feels like, well, more oftentimes than not, it can kind of feel like you're already given, or the setup is already there. You know what I mean? Like, when I think about like social media, or when I think about the internet, it's like I don't have to create like a internet. Like, I don't have to create the internet. The internet is already there. I don't have to create a video service like YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcast to put out this podcast onto. Those are just platforms available for me. Like, they've already done all that work for me. So all that's left to do, or like the groundwork, or the building, or the scratch part, comes from like my ideas and me talking and stuff like that. And that's kind of just the starting point, creating something that's like fun for people to enjoy and to have fun listening to. Now, does it always work out? No. But there are other factors to consider when building something, you know what I mean? Like, if you build yourself a house, right, it's more so for yourself than it is for anything else. And yes, it appreciates in value over time, but I just feel like, it's something for you, I guess. You know what I mean? So it's not anything wasted, but that's kind of how I guess I look at this podcast, or building anything on the internet or anything online. It's just a matter of like, starting and then keeping it going. It's you have to think about it from the point of view of like, you're building something right now, and however you want to look at it, you're a little bit behind, you know what I mean? Somebody's already the best at doing a podcast. They already know, like, they already have an audience, they already have a brand, they already have like listeners, they got the market capped, you know what I mean? Starting a podcast so late in the game, it kind of feels like, you're failing, you're behind, you have to do so much. to catch up or to be great like that, you know what I mean? But in all honesty, it's just about like showing up and trying and making it happen, you know? And that's the scratch. That's you from digging up the dirt, you know, from the bottom. It's like those guys that you see on you guys ever watch those videos? I think I've mentioned this before, but those videos of those guys that like they'll be out there with like half naked with their shirts off, and they'll start digging like they'll start crafting a house out of mud and dirt and sticks and whatnot. They'll build like a swimming pool and stuff like that. Now some of that is fake. I have seen a video like debunking like, oh, they're using like construction equipment to help make the video, but you know, whether it's fake or not, I just like the idea, the concept of them making it from scratch, you know what I mean? And so it's a little bit like that, you know what I mean? Not physically, but more so like the consistency of showing up every single day or taking the time to create something, to make a little house, a hut, a little like swimming pool, whatever they were trying to build, you know? I just feel like not like what's the right word? It feels oftentimes like you don't really have to like start from the bottom or in the scratch of it all. Sometimes it's just a matter of you showing up, you know? It's just a matter of you getting there and saying, you know what? I have an idea and I'm going to make it work, you know? And then showing up every single day and trying it. So that's kind of how I've been feeling a bit with this podcast and whatnot, with social media and trying anything digitally online. It's a bit of a failure, but I have to realize that like I like this, and trying at it is the hard part, you know what I mean? And honestly, if you just keep on going with it, either you build something or you don't really lose anything because you're already at the bottom, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. But that's the thing, right? Is that like if you're living in like one of those villages or whatever, like where you build your own stuff, if you start building like a little house for yourself or a little tent or whatever, right? Like back in the day, you either build some shelter, you create a home for yourself, or you give up and you're just like, this tent or this hut was too hard for me to make. I'm just going to quit and give up on it. Then you're still homeless, right? Like you still got nothing. So you end where you started, and you don't really lose anything, but you don't gain anything. Whereas if you continue to try to make like this hut, this village, or this little tent of yours, you know what I mean? Then you get a home, you get a house, you get something of yours for yourself, you know what I mean? You get a little piece of something, you know? And that's the cool part, is that you got to stick with it, you know? And it's not going to be, it's not going to be tomorrow. It's not going to be the next day. It takes time. But consistency pays off, more often than anything else. And sometimes you don't really want to feel like you're consistently wasting your time. But on the other hand, if you're gonna go for something, it might as well be for you, So when you're building something from scratch, you ever think about the people who took the time, like the scientists of the generation, you know what I mean? That were like, you know what we have to try? Let's put pumpkin, let's get some pumpkin, right? Like they came up with this. They were like, you know what we should do? There's this pumpkin thing. Let's get all of that the sweet juices from that, we put it in some sugar, we put some eggs in there, and we do some other stuff to it, right? We mix it all together, and then we're gonna throw it into the oven, right? And we're gonna make a pie out of it. And with that you get pumpkin pie, right? Like there were people that were starting from the scratch of it all. You know, they didn't know what they were putting together. They were just like, you know what? Why don't we try like somebody was out there, they were like, what if we wrap this fish in clay and then we cook it? And somebody was like, genius, you know, let's write that down. And then somebody else was like, what if we take, you know, somebody was out there and they were just coming up with ideas. They were like, what if we take this red wine and we cook food with it? And they were like, genius, you know? Somebody out there was just like starting from nothing. And they were just like, what if we tried this? What if we tried that? And that's kind of I don't know. When you think about it, you're kind of like, they had so many choices for it. You know what I mean? And then you wake up today and it's like, I can't really create or invent anything because everything's already been created and invented. And then the other things that need to be invented, well, somebody else is going to like snatch it from you or take it from you, you know what I mean? They're going to tell you that you can't do that. You have to give it to the government, or the government's going to step in and say, "Hey, listen, this is a great idea. We're not going to let you take this. This is going to be ours." And so they steal the patent from you and so on and so forth. It ruins everything. But the point being is that like back then it was so normal to start from scratch. Whereas now it's like you have to have a little bit of something. You have to build something of your own, you know. Maybe not from scratch, maybe from what other people are able to like provide you with, or things that you also work for, but it's not necessarily from scratch, right? Like if you work a job and then you start a business, you don't create the business from nothing. You use the money that you got from your job to build the business, and then you start from scratch from there. You know what I mean? I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of like spitballing or just rambling at this point, but hopefully you get my point, is that now it feels less like we're actually, I don't know, quote unquote, gaining something, or like, what's the right word? It doesn't feel like we're starting from scratch anymore these days. It feels like everything's already been kind of decided, or things are already like set in stone and in place. And it's just a matter of us figuring out the game to like how everybody else sees it. You know what I mean? How the world has already dictated it to be, you know? But then again, you can always... There is a way to start from scratch, you know what I mean? I don't know. I think it was just so much different to think about how you start from one place and then you end up building something, like changing the world, you know what I mean? Like when they created New York City, when they were like, we have an idea to create this amazing city, and then they started working on it and to see where it is now. You ever think about those people? You ever think about those people that were like, I built this street and it's still there today? Or somebody was like, we were building this building like together, and then they got old, and then they passed away at one point. But you know, I often think about like, man, it would be so cool if they could still see what they created, you know? See how it's evolved after all this time, and how much of it is kind of the same or different, you know? But that's the cool thing about making something from scratch, is that like when it's something really good and it stands the test of time, like that quality. You ever see those refrigerators from like the 50s or the 60s or 70s or however long ago? And you can tell that the quality is like way better than what we make now, because now we cut corners to save money, right? Like they built refrigerators back in the day to last for your whole life, you know what I mean? That's the quality product. Whereas today it's like you build it, you enjoy it for now, and then later on, you'll have to buy a new one. So they use cheaper equipment, right? They use plastic instead of metal, 100% metal, right? And sometimes, and then they have to get like filters for like the water and the ice and this and that, you know? And I can't tell you honestly if it's like better this way. I just know that it's a way that the companies figure out a way to like, this is how we can still make money even after all this time, you know? But I don't know. I guess I'm being a little bit like, but then again, somebody built the refrigerator company, you know what I mean, from scratch. So they're probably like, I want to hold on to this business as long as I can, you know? I don't know. It's tricky. Because when you think about the big businesses out there, you have to think to yourself that, like, well, this one started as something small. It wasn't, it wasn't always like this huge business like it is now, you know what I mean? It isn't like this global, noticeable brand like we know it today. At one point, it was small and starting out, and they started from scratch and they built it into what it is today, you know? And there has to be some sort of a credit or some sort of a like, hey, you did something that's crazy, you know what I mean? But right now it's like, I don't know, it feels a bit impossible now that they started before. And it's like, if I try to open a burger restaurant now, it's like, how can I compete with McDonald's? You know what I mean? How can I compete with whatever else is out there when they already have like all the real estate, all of the buildings, they're a branded name, you know what I mean? They have billions of dollars every single year. And I just made this burger restaurant and I can't even like survive, you know what I mean? With the competition against me. And that's the problem, you know what I mean? It's like the business is dwindling down, and it feels less and less like you can actually compete or fight for yourself or build something, as opposed to like, I have to find something else to do, you know? I don't know. But there are those moments when you think to yourself, like, you ever, like, created something? Like, just, like, whatever, creatively. Like think of, like, origami. Or maybe some sort of arts and crafts project. Maybe, like, a drawing or a painting or something. You ever do something like that? And then you're, like, you create something so cool or so, like, hey, I made that, you know? And then you think to yourself, like, that was so cool, you know? And you're really proud of yourself for it. And then you kind of look at it every now and then, you just realize that, like, I remember when I did this, and it meant a lot to me. Yeah, I have to think about stuff like that where it's like, man, it's so cool to be able to be like, I created this from nothing, you know what I mean? And now it's like, what's the next thing, you know? Because the people who built New York City, like who created that city, they probably were like, all right, what's the next city? What's the other land we can conquer? What's the other thing that we can build? And now it's kind of like, I don't want to say hard, but I don't know. I like, could you imagine like New York City tearing down the Empire State Building to create a new one? It's like, no. Maybe they renovate it or whatnot, but like, they won't tear it down. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's weird, but I guess we just kind of like get stuck in our ways, you know? when you create something, you want to protect it, instead of like starting over again, Like, what's to stop us from saying, like, let's redo New York City, uh, you know, like let's rebuild it. Let's make it a new place. You know what I mean? But then, why not just do that with everything? But since it's already built, it's easier to maintain it than it is to start over from scratch, I guess. Not to mention the manpower, the hours it would take to build everything over again. Yeah, I don't know. But then again, the I guess the global gain of, or I guess our country's gain for updating or rebuilding or remodifying everything that we have is going to be, it would be a huge reward, you know what I mean? It would be like a new beginning, I guess. But I don't think we're ever going to get there again. But that's not to say that the things that we have now aren't great. Could be better, but hopefully you get my point. I don't know. I think when you're building something from scratch, when you actually know, like, every single piece or every single part of the puzzle that you put together yourself, and it comes out as a success, and there's praise and applause, and you're actually like, wow, I'm winning, I'm doing well. I accomplished what I set out to do in my goals. That's the cool part about it. More than anything else, I guess. I don't know. But what about those people that well, I was going to say, like, video game developers, or those guys build something from scratch, or like they have to work with the things that they're given, you know what I mean? If there weren't certain things holding them back, but my point is that, like, they have to come up with an idea for a game, you know what I mean? That's original and different and doesn't follow like a franchise or a pattern or whatnot. You ever think about those like random games that come out and then everybody's like, "Wow, this is great." Like that game Black Myth Wukong. I mean, that's based off mythology though. But you get my point, is that like they created something that was different from, I guess, whatever else was out there at the time. Or what was it, last year? I think it was last year, but you know what I mean. And then this upcoming like GTA 6, it's like that's part of a franchise, and they're taking forever with it, but you know what I mean. And then with Mario Kart and stuff like that, that's like, it's also part of the Nintendo franchise and whatnot. It's part of the Mario brand, so it's not really original, but you get my point, is that these developers, these game designers, these guys are out there trying to create something that's interactive, that's fun to play with, to get joy out of, you know what I mean? Get joy out of you and make you excited and enjoy what you're doing. But I guess it's just not, there are things that hold you back, obviously, and the amount of time it takes to create something like that, and not to mention the employees and the investors and whatnot, the story of the game or whatever, how to play, all of that varies. But I don't know. overall, I think when you're building something from scratch, right? Because you yourself built it, there's a little bit of, well, it has everything to do with you, you know? It's all a part of who you are. It's all a part of what matters to you and what makes you you, you know? How do you really make your life great? And it's by starting from the bottom and then working your way, scratching and clawing your way up to something, you know? And so I often think about the past or the people that, like, all of our ancestors that started from nothing and created what we have now, you know? Whether it's machines or houses or video games, all of it is just like, you think about it and you're just like, wow, you know? That's really cool, and that's something that I guess everybody kind of wants to be a part of or try, you know, and do. I don't know. Just putting it out there. When you're building something from scratch, it's got to be an amazing feeling to succeed and or to fail, to learn, you know? So, if you're out there building something from scratch, I support you, and you're going to succeed. Just keep trying. You never fail if you keep trying, you know? So, thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.